But so I'm sorry, I just sent the agenda around. So you should have in your email, but I can also kind of here is the agenda, and I might have to go back and forth to some differing things. So I went through the report to see, wait, why is this not? Can you see it? So
Yeah.
I went through the report, and I also to see where we were with everything. I appreciate the comments that people were able to put in, that Shara put in particulars. I decided we should probably talk about a couple of them. But I guess I want to talk about, like, okay, so Rachel, remind everyone, when is our part of the report due, and discuss what other committees are doing for a second, please, if you don't mind.
Yeah, so we're just aiming for June 30th to have everything to the steering committee. I know we're in the process, and Jennifer can probably chime in as well. We're in the process of scheduling a meeting for all of the chairs to come together. I think we're doing it for a 2-hour block so that they can kind of present what they have in terms of findings. And so most everyone is just working on filling out the draft template that we put together. We have some people who have put together some pretty extensive documents. I know you're in the voter access and registration committee, and I'm sure you saw the document that Ted put together
It's pretty
about.
cool. It was
Yeah.
very nice and brief and to the point, though.
Yes,
Uh,
very
but
cool.
very extensive. So the other committee, we're working on disability access. And so Ted Stilley that was his thing. He was in charge of it, and he really went to town, didn't he?
Yeah, it was very, very detailed. And so most of them are following the template that we've put out. Some of them are kind of working on they're filling out the template, and like for each topic they're filling the template out. Some of them are doing one pagers. I know that some of them are working on doing like some PowerPoint slides. So it kind of varies across the board.
Okay. So we're not off the beaten path too much. Okay. Well, great. So June 30th. So that means we have one more meeting we could be putting things together. Okay. Thank you, Rachel. I appreciate your help. All right. So the next thing is, so I feel like I'm not sharing the right screen, am I? I guess next thing on my list is I wrote up a section on election worker safety, and I prepared a quick report if you all are interested in taking a look at that. That's a bunch of PowerPoint slides. Then I will make it so. Now, if I can find the PowerPoint slides in my list of things to share, be all set here. Yay, me and technology, we're friends. Okay. So, and this is all in the report, which I sent to you all right before the meeting. So you could almost follow along, but there's a little more detail in the report. And I'm obviously, I'll hope you'll kind of look through it. So there are a couple of things that we could discuss. But what I did is I went through some of the information that we'd been gathering, one of which was the discussion from Dr. Roberts, who came, what was that, February? And he and his PhD student, who is no longer a PhD student, had done a survey of election directors. And so, a fundamental problem with election safety is that there's been turnover in election directors. And there are a number of sources that attribute some of that turnover to election safety and a lack of feeling of safety. And you sort of see quite a bit of worry about safety. So 25% of them have experienced threats. So Dr. Roberts and Dr. Greenberger also surveyed staffers, and they found 10% of election staffers have reported threats. Back to the election directors, 75% of them worried for their own personal safety, but 90% of them are worried for their colleagues. And 85% think threats have increased since 2020. Another bit of data that I put in was our talk from the BDI from Tom last a couple of weeks ago, the day I had jury duty, actually. So there were a couple of slides that I thought were relevant. One, you can see on the left, part of it comes from a survey that was conducted at Reed College by a couple of longstanding, excellent election scholars, and then some work also with Civic Pulse, sort of looking at their local elected, this is elected officials' experience with hostile events by time period, and not just election officials. But the slide on the right, or I should say the slide in the middle, because I have two of the slides that I'm putting in the report, is about people who, LEOs, the local election officials who knew someone who left their job in part because of fear for safety. So the third slide that I put in here was about local officials navigating persistently high levels of harassment. And actually, I had an opportunity in another meeting I was at today to ask a question that I hadn't asked before because I hadn't looked at this so carefully. This is officials. So this includes all kinds of local government people, I think. So I asked, actually, there was another Bridging Divide person at this meeting that I was at today, and I took him aside in a virtual meeting and I asked him, you know, this is not election officials that Tom was talking about here, right? This is all elected officials or local officials, and he said that was correct. So I'm actually trying to see, they're going to check and see if they can get more specific data about election officials or election directors or staffers, and right. So another thing I learned today in this meeting I went to is that Brennan Center has a new study out. The Brennan Center of the last 3 years, so they're kind of a left-leaning organization, but they do a lot of things that are arguably pretty bi or nonpartisan, and I would say this is one. So this new, it's a study of a local election directors all over the country. So this is all national data and not specific to North Carolina. But I thought I'd go ahead and put this in if you guys want to, if you want to recommend that we take it out. But this is pretty new data. But so they're saying about 38% report they've had threats or harassment or some sort of personal violence. They also found that 83% of the election directors they talked to reported that they thought that they needed greater budgets to meet growing security threats. And so that'll work in with some stuff I talk about later. I included this table in the report because it shows that last year when they did this survey, 30% felt threatened or they report threats. And this year, 38% report threats, which when they presented that today, they said that, you know, that this is, you know, it stands to reason because it is an election year and the big, you know, for a presidential election year, and things are a little bit different. But what's also different about this is that this table also includes definitions of these things, which I think need to maybe possibly appear somewhere in the report. And I might put that in the text. I might leave it there. I haven't decided. So I learned about one new thing today that I completely had not heard of. I've heard of being doxxed, which is having your personal information published online with the intent to threaten your safety. But I had never heard of swatting. And apparently this is happening in some places where bad actors are calling out, say, Martha Croft, because maybe she has drugs on hand. Well, obviously Martha Croft does not have any drugs other than those legally prescribed in the state of North Carolina, right? But they send armed SWAT teams. And so according to the Brennan Center study, some people are starting to worry about that. So I thought that was worth putting in here because you'll see, I think that we may want to think about how the GA, the General Assembly, might address these things. So just to look at what's been done. So the Brennan Center said that a lot of local election officials have taken steps to increase their safety, like 92% have taken like a variety of actions. I don't know who paid for that, and I'm gonna email them and try and find out. I also, some of the data that I had showed that, or the National Conference of State Legislatures says that 18 states have passed laws that specifically address the issues of violence, and North Carolina is not one of those states. The Department of Justice has a task force that they're dealing with these threats and harassment. Some of the stuff that I read sort of suggested that this isn't terribly an effective strategy because the Department of Justice is dealing with First Amendment issues. So I may call, Greg a big fat jerk and I want him to die. Well, I do have free speech, right? And you would not believe some of the things that I've read that they say to these election directors. It's really quite horrible, but there's not a lot that they can do because of free speech issues. So one article said, in the first year of that program, there were over 1,000 complaints, and they said a handful. I don't know what that means. I have 5 fingers. Maybe it means under 10. It's not clear, but not very many. And only one person had been convicted. So they have this national task force. They've actually been out there communicating about it to various groups, but I don't know how effective it is. So I'm sorry, this is kind of small writing. I'll try and go through this fairly quickly. You can read about it in more detail, I think. First off, BDI, the Bridging Divides Initiative, recommends de-escalation training, and we talked about that during our last meeting. Shara had suggested that this happened with law enforcement officials, and I think we can go ahead and put that in our report. That was one of the comments that you put in. But I also think that there's a lot of organizations out there, and BDI actually has a fairly long list that do a de-escalation training. And so that should we should recommend maybe that it should at least happen with the chief judge. But also perhaps as many poll workers as we could, though we don't want to scare poll workers into working, because of course that's one of our other problems. You tell them there's all these problems. You got to balance, though, that these problems could take place. So another recommendation in all of the reports I read said election experts and officials, but especially those who are former law enforcement officials, should help educate local law enforcement, including police unions, about police disinformation and the security of elections. So it was a recent, no, I take that back. It really wasn't recent. In 2022 ProPublica article, which I don't cite in this report, but it was about the Michaela, whatever her last name is, the chief director in Surry County. She had actually had law enforcement officers included among them, people trying to get into her office to take a look at the voting equipment. And, she couldn't let them in. And her name was basically mud all over her town. And she's like, this is a majority Republican area, but I am a Republican. But I am at first an election official, and these are the laws. But so the question is, how much do the local sheriffs and the like that and police officers, how much do they know? So again, I don't specifically address that in the problem statement, and maybe you guys can look and see what you think. But I worry, I think, again, you can disagree, but I think we need to get the buy-in of the police force, the law enforcement officers, to make sure that we have maximal safety for election workers. So Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency is a federal agency that's under the Department of Homeland Security, and they have been doing threat assessments of various types, including physical safety, I think including cybersecurity, Jennifer. kinds of things. And so maybe we suggest that they increase it or that we let it be known. This is one of the suggestions from one of the reports, or we let it be known that these are available. But this report said they should increase physical security guidance and resources for election workers and utilize regional election leads to coordinate outreach. Another issue then was the funding. So funding could come from the federal government or funding could come from state government. Local government, the counties are already in North Carolina funding elections. But they're subject to whatever budget constraints that they have. They also have potholes to fill and education to do, all these things that counties are responsible for. So one suggestion in one of the reports, I'm seeing lots of good chats, which I haven't been following because I'm so focused on I can't wait to read those. Okay, I'll just keep talking and then I'll go back and look at and make sure I didn't miss anything. But funding increases. So the report, one of the reports suggested the DHS, the DOJ, the Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Agency, and the Election Assistance Commission maybe consider giving grants for safety. And that would include safety for homes of local election workers maybe as well. Okay, I know I have more. It's just not going to go here. So as far as the General Assembly, we could encourage them to pass legislation to protect the personal information of the local election officials. State officials should make, okay, I wrote this fast, you can tell they should address confidentiality programs. So currently there are laws to protect domestic violence victims. To kind of keep their information secret once they move. But those laws don't necessarily protect like people like local election officials or judges or others that might actually have issues. And so one suggestion is that states should make confidentiality programs, work with them as well. So I couldn't see where Sarah Lavier lived and then, send a drug squad out to her house. And state legislatures, according to another report, should fund training and services to help election workers better protect their personal information online, so they actually learn how to do it. State legislatures should ensure that laws prohibit threatening election workers and make sure that they apply to everybody. So I think I need to do a little bit more research on this because Karen Bell had said during her talk that there is some legislation, but right now it's like it makes it a misdemeanor instead of a felony, or makes it a misdemeanor, and maybe we should be moving toward making it a harder punishment. Sorry, that's the smart way of saying that, right? Well, but the bottom line is that I think that we could encourage more with that to try and protect them. So so this is interesting. So there was one report, I hadn't even thought about this, but if the Department of Justice can't do anything about me making this threat against, say, a local election official, why not make it so it could be a civil action? So if I said Greg is a stupid jerk and I want him to leave and die, whatever, then he could sue me. And there are certain standards. If a reasonable person feels threatened, then maybe that person could have a cause of action. I don't know when in their busy schedules local election officials would have time to sue anybody, but maybe, like the Attorney General could bring a cause of action. So it's not just private action that has to happen, but maybe we could say an Attorney General could bring the action. I'm just throwing that out as a possibility. And then
I think we need
okay.
the legislature maybe to enact something that's a heightened type of law if someone threatens an election official or a poll worker.
So it would be like
just like there is hate, hate crimes, a certain a heightened penalty.
Right, because I guess, like assault and some of these threats, sometimes they're criminal penalties. Like a hate crime, but yeah. So yeah, let me write that down, and when you read, put that I'll try and remember to put that in, but make sure that you do that and we can talk about it. Jennifer, you have a question?
Yeah, so I have an 11-page document of sample legislation from other states and key elements for legislation to protect election workers. Includes intimidation, harassment, assault, doxing, inappropriate access to election
Oh.
equipment, penalties,
Oh,
funding.
yeah.
Funding is a part of everything. Whistleblower protections, right? That's another part of it. So I can send this to the committee. I can't remember if I got it from, there's so many nonprofits out there that are
I
doing,
know, right?
So I downloaded it as a Word document. So I can share that with the committee. It's got list of ordinances and resolutions at the local level. Colorado's got some, Minnesota, Oregon. So anyway, I will be happy to share this.
That's great. No reason to reinvent the wheel.
So I agree, like
I
if
got-
they look at sample legislation that other states have done, and so the Brennan Center also found in their report that they released that I heard today was that the election officials felt safer when the states had made efforts to either increase funding for physical safety or pass some sort of legislation. So, we could, I don't know how we include that with the report, but maybe we do so. So, so I'm seeing lots of comments. So let me see. Delete Me as a platform. You guys have probably already read these yet. For
Martha?
journalists. Yesy? Yes, sir? Yes.
This is Leslie. Sorry, can I jump in? I'm actually at my
Yes.
location to get the guy to show me how I'm going to set up the precinct Tuesday. But I just wanted to remind us that Guilford County Board of Elections in our training said that Charlie said that he had set up a task force of policemen and other folks to be on call should there be any threats or any violence. And so we need to actually get the technical understanding of how he's doing that. So I will look into that.
Oh, that,
'cause it might
yes, that's right.
It might
Okay,
be
so
a best practice. But I'm at my location. This is all great. I will look at the report and excited for our focus. Take care, everyone.
thank you so much, Leslie. I appreciate it. So that is interesting to delete me. I can see why journalists might use that. Should we recommend it? Oh, Carter Center employees use delete me.
Yeah, what it does basically is pay this company to find your name on all kinds of sales lists and like they send you a report and they found my name on 51 different exploratory sales lists that they deleted. You have to, if you go to these companies and say, take me off your list, they will do it, but somebody has to have the time to do that. And that's what this company does. And it prevents you from getting a lot of spam, but it also, limits the kind of wacko, outreach and threats and things that people can get. The Carter Center's been using it because they have people working in, tough countries all around the world, and people try to hack them and phish them, and so they don't want to get emails spread around too much.
What's
Yeah,
the
I would
cost?
think.
What's the cost?
Yeah, what is the cost?
I've got it for family. It was $400 for the year. I've got 5 people on it. You give them your various emails. They really just, go in and search databases for where your email appears, and then they contact that group and say, please delete that. So you don't get all that,
And you have to pay that every year.
Yep.
Wow.
I can't remember how much it is for one person.
Ask. Go ahead.
I said, I can't remember how much it is for just one person. I can't remember. Probably like $90, something like that. A year.
Someone took out a life insurance policy on you?
Yeah,
Jennifer.
yeah, that was
Oh.
very creative.
I
And
guess.
company called me and said, we're just checking, we've got this life insurance policy. And I'm like, what? So needless to say, they did not complete that insurance policy, but they never told me who it was who took it out, who was the beneficiary. I never learned.
I'm sorry.
Wow.
Okay, so Catherine, I don't know how long they're gonna do this, but the Bridging Divides Initiative is actually tracking threats and harassment and physical violence toward local officials. So they're doing it. I mean, we could encourage someone to continue to do it. Thoughts?
Well, what I was just thinking is if it's kind of formalized within the state and each board of elections knows about it, it becomes institutionalized versus
Mhm.
and all the great work that they're doing is
Yeah.
amazing. But if we don't know the extent of the problem unless it's a regular institutionalized thing that all the counties know about and it's all
Okay.
tracked.
Well, I'll go ahead and I can add that into the report when we get to it. Any other discussion on this? Again, you can put in your comments in the report. So like I said, I sent it to you all right before the meeting started, so you can get a look at that. So let me see what's next on our agenda then. Okay, so the next thing I wanted to discuss was there was an article this week in the News and Observer about election director salaries. And so I don't know if everybody has seen it. I should have shared it. Can you see it now? The inside look, NC election directors grapple with pay. So they quoted our very own Sarah Levere, who is on our committee. But okay, so I'm warning you, I'm gonna track through this. They have beautiful pictures I would love to use in some report that I do.
Yeah, it was a great article. We should contact whoever wrote it.
Yeah, Kyle Ingram.
Yeah.
But I will tell you, Jennifer, that I'm also in the process of doing research about election director salaries over time, but I would like to hear what he has to say. But the median salary among North Carolina's election directors, that's median, not average, right? So the middle value is 70,000, according to data from all 100 counties. Wake's person makes 200 a year, and Hyde and Graham counties make less than 41. So there's this is just a PDF copy, so you can't really work through here, but this shows all the different salaries. And they show the county median earnings and then the voter population, so you could get a sense of how much they're being paid.
Seems to be
Yes.
tracking the population and the amount of money that these counties have. So, it's the same thing with the infrastructure of the actually running the election. I'd say the poll workers don't get paid as much in these areas either.
Yeah, and that's actually an empty data point that we don't have yet, that I haven't figured out how to get. I probably should have asked Catherine to ask it, but there's probably so many different poll workers, right? That it would be like you probably make the most, and then there's some that maybe gets a very small amount depending on the county. So go ahead.
400, I think 440, 450 per election. And part of that is because I'm working out of precinct, so I'll get a little more, but that's about the most you can make as an election worker.
So, and you're also in Wake County.
I'm in Wake County, and I dare say that's probably other than Mecklenburg, the highest.
So,
Hmm.
yeah, I mean, Michael Dickerson makes a good amount of money. But, so this is based on the American Community Survey, what the median county earnings are. I don't know if this is something we'd want to encourage, for election directors to be making more money. So I don't have right in front of me the amount they're paid per voter in their precinct, or per registered voter, or even per person, citizen voting age population. But some of these seem rather low. So another thing I want to point out, and I'm not sure if I have to stop sharing and then start again. Let me look at something here. If you look in the report, there is, here it is right here. Now, you can't see that, can you? So I have to stop and start again? Okay, let's see. So here's our report, and if so, I'll tell you in a second what I did here is I put in some of the stuff from Jason Roberts' report. And one thing that I think people who study elections have observed over time is that the job has gotten more and more difficult and complex, no matter where you are. And so I thought that I also want to talk about figure 2, but I'm going to start down here at the bottom on table 2. The percent indicating that the workload has increased since 2019 is, a lot is about a third of the election directors, and a moderate amount is 26.4%. So, the real question is, should we consider recommending more salary for election workers? So I'm just throwing that out there as a possibility. I don't know that that's something we would want to do. Thoughts?
I think funding is going to be an issue. Almost every committee has talked about it.
Right.
So what we may want to do once we see all the drafts is figure out where are the priority areas in the budget. Because, software and equipment, and I mean, there's so many things that need updating, even the number of election workers, et cetera. Anyway, I think funding is it's a cross-cutting issue. And clearly it's not a priority. And these folks who are, yeah,
the counties have so many other priorities, and elections only happen, maybe once or twice a year, and out of sight, out of mind. And the other thing is there's not an established constituency other than, say, the Association of Election Directors to advocate for more funding or higher salaries. So okay, so you hear, everyone, that the steering committee will be talking about various funding issues. I guess then the question is, do we want to push toward the steering committee the idea that local election officials might be underpaid? Do you want to communicate that as a part of this, or do you want to leave that alone?
So we have the problem, which is in some of these counties, they are underfunded on a number of levels.
Yes.
The director, the poll workers, the equipment, what have you. I guess then we need to identify, well, what would fix this? More funding. Okay, where do we get the funding? And I guess another solution is, how do we divide this in a way, because not all counties need funding. I don't think the bigger counties need it. So at what point do we draw a line and say, okay, these more rural counties need more help? Does that make sense?
It most certainly does.
And I can ask my husband, I'll ask him from a federal level, does he know of some place that there might be a pot of money that would be available for something like this? he's worked in the federal government before, so he might
I mean,
be able to help us.
that would be great. I mean, there are a number of organizations. Well, I should say, I know because I'm involved in one, that the Dole Center in University of Kansas and the Edward Kennedy Library are working to bring additional federal funding to elections. That's one thing that they're pushing for. One wonders if we should push from the bottom as well. We are certainly grassroots. And, you know, I am perfectly comfortable, I think, asking for those various federal agencies, some of the reports said, asking them to establish grant programs for physical safety is eminently reasonable. The question is, you know, what do we do about salary? Okay, ask about pots of money, but pots of money aren't often, you know, long-term, and continue to pay the salary. I don't know, the state legislature is has a big enough surplus to send us money back.
Well,
So,
the other thing to remember is that we have a lot of partners that are working on civic education, League of Women Voters, You Can Vote, you know, all these groups out there. And if we disseminate the report with recommendations to those groups that are advocacy groups, that's the way it can happen, correct? So we don't have to worry about, you know, taking a position or whatever. We're just presenting facts. But if we give this to League of Women Voters who really believe in making sure that, you know, elections work and that people can register and all that, they may very well take a position and lobby the legislature and say, look, you got to pay these folks better because we're losing too many. So just a thought.
the question is, do we even include, so we don't have to take a position on salaries, we don't have to do anything. Here's what they're paid.
Well, we can make findings, and if we believe that we are not in line with, you know, what's appropriate, we can say that. We can say one of the reasons people may be leaving is that the salaries are not, you know, commensurate to the workload and the harassment and, you know, the challenges that election workers face.
Well, the name of my paper that's under review is "They Don't Pay Me Enough for This."
Well, there you go.
They, sorry, I've just had to bring that. I'm very proud of that title. Although I
Well-
got a comment during a conference that
Yeah.
it wasn't relevant, but I think it is. Well, so from Jason's report, from Dr. Roberts' report, so which of the following
Definitely
policy,
attach your report.
pardon me?
So we'll definitely attach your report in the appendix.
We can. I'm
Yeah.
not really ready to present it. You know, we're going to present it next week at a conference. It is under review, but we'll get some comments back from election officials in California and other scholars. But I mean, a pay raise would keep about half of the election staff there. So I guess I'll just leave that there. If you guys want me, I don't know what we want. I mean, that's not one of the high priorities we had. I guess I'm not hearing super excitement right now about this.
Well, I would say it could very well be connected to turnover, but like, do we have that data? You know, were there exit interviews with the people that left that cited salary as an issue? Certainly, when you look at that database with the News and Observer, there's a lot that are not paid a living wage. So I can't imagine what their staff is paid. So I think maybe emphasizing some of the facts that we do have, and maybe posing the question that, you know, we do need more data and research about whether or not these salaries are sufficient to, you know, pay for the minimum costs that the staff have.
You know, I could call my, where I'm from, which is Yancey County, and just call the director and just see how different it is from, let's say, here in Wake County, to get an idea of how the rural counties are operating. Like, how many precincts do they have?
So we could, that data, we can get that. We could, that data, I mean, I think, you know, that our state board of elections is an open book. It's quite lovely. So I think, so what I maybe am hearing is that what we need is something like, okay, we have this. And maybe this is, we're talking to Kyle too, the reporter, but we could get something like, you know, how many poll workers are there in the community? We could, you know, like over the past several years, that was EAC data, right? The Election Assistance Commission data. We could get how many precincts? What else would we want? Other ideas?
You know, are they giving training programs? How are they
Well-
training their officials? Because I know that costs money, and that's part of what we're paid for, is to attend these training programs.
Well, so part of this could be that, you know, we find out how many staff members they have, and I know that data are available. That data is available, that data are available. It sounds funny, but I think that's, I could see how many staff members, are they training them? Well, like, so I think that like in Met County, they would have someone that trains them. Right, so Michael Dickerson directs a lot of things and does a lot of things, but there's a lot of, you know, delegation. He doesn't have to do all of it. So if you knew how many staff members they were overseeing, and then if we could easily figure out per registered voters, how much are they making? And what is that position made in the past? Because those data, my colleague, Mary Jo McGowan, who's the chair of the campaign finance committee, has data going back to 2014, maybe. So I mean, I could just put this together and put it in the report and you guys could see what you think.
Yeah, and I think a lot of these counties, the county board of elections, one of the things they're going to say their biggest problem is finding poll workers. I think they'll say that. I think they'll say that before what they're being paid, but they'll put finding poll workers and the problem with safety. I think that's going to be their two big ones.
You know, I could pull the EAC data and put it with the salary data too. Right, because they do report how difficult it is, because Greg was using those data for his part of the report, right, Greg? I don't know if that was going to be another thing here, if you had anything new to show on that. Do you have anything new to add to poll workers, by the way, while we're at it?
Yeah,
I do
I was just
too.
going to say difficulty recruiting is a problem, especially for some reason in our middle-sized counties in North Carolina. That was kind of interesting. The smallest and the largest quartiles did much better in that question. But yeah, and I did update it. I think we talked last time about the relevance of having the North Carolina data included. So I've added that, and I'll plop it into your document.
Awesome, thank you.
I didn't go back and look at trends because I'm not sure. Anyway, I was just kind of like, is the juice worth the squeeze there? Because the numbers are bad as they are.
Absolutely. This is some of this. Yeah, I've been wondering that myself for some of the things. Yeah. I've never
But the
heard is
numbers
the
are bad.
juice worth the squeeze though. I like that. I'm gonna
that's a good
steal
one.
that. I'm gonna steal that. Yeah. Okay.
Cheryl, were you going to say something?
Yeah, I've been kind of working on ideas of recruiting more poll workers. I did have a conversation with the Wake County Bar Association CLE point person. And I'm very excited about what we're going to try to do. We're going to have probably the Wake County board of director, the director there, and someone from the North Carolina Board of Elections come speak either through this summer through Zoom or maybe in person. And we're going to create a 1-hour CLE program. And then we're going to record it. And then we're going to package the whole thing, and then we're going to send it over to Mecklenburg County, some of these other bigger counties, so that they can jump on and advertise it to all these attorneys to get them out to try to help us. The other thing, I am going to sit down with the head of the North Carolina Republican Party and the Democrat Party to see if they can engage their members come out and work, because I think that'd go a long way.
Like
and-
creating sort of engagement with both
That's right.
parties.
And every county has a county Republican Party and a Democrat Party on a local level. And
Right.
these organizations would be able to tap right into that. So I think that would be a big one. But I think, you know, when we're talking about infrastructure, I think this is one of the big problems they're having. And that, and probably getting some training that is consistent across the state, that would make it a lot easier to run their elections.
So I think that this idea of working with the superintendent of public instruction, the Department of Education, to work, and I don't know who, I can't remember who put that comment in, but I thought that might be an interesting one, to work with the high schools. And I don't know how people feel about that, but I thought that was a really cool idea.
I think it's a great idea for working at the high school level. And then there was,
Right, I agree.
And
I think that's great from so many perspectives, right? Because it gets them excited about elections. So maybe they'll actually participate in elections. And it, you know, hopefully would address the issues of the lack of poll workers.
and then
Yeah,
there's civic,
Go
that
ahead.
college level class that's looking at civics, teaching civics. And, you know,
So that's not what that's gonna do, Shara.
Okay.
So what she's talking about is that there has been a movement to require to get states to pass legislation to require foundations of American government. And the foundations of American government include like some papers from the Federalist Papers, asking the students to read the Constitution, asking them to read the Declaration of Independence. I think Letters from a Birmingham Jail was the most contemporary thing that people are reading. I don't think that so it's learning about a lot of things that we're already, like, my husband's all over this. He loves it. He's already, he teaches the Declaration of Independence. He teaches the Constitution. He teaches the Federalist Papers and American government. And so what our Board of Governors is trying to do, though, is head them off at the pass and go ahead and require it without any funding for all of our students, which would be devastating, because we need the funding, because we don't have enough faculty to run all of the students at the university. We're thinking maybe 4,000 or 5,000 a semester or a year, I think, possibly. And none of this, which
Yeah,
you know how strongly I feel about all of this.
this wouldn't at all.
Like,
Feedback.
I would love to see us add, you know, though some students can't do service learning, but add a service learning component to it, right? Where we require them to work at the polls, or we require them to open absentee ballots at the, you know, at the election board, or something like that, right? I would love that. And but that's not what this is.
I know a lot of high schools now are pushing students in community service. Do colleges do that with students?
So yes, we have a person who actually works through Leslie Gavin and a variety of other organizations, who organizes, we call it the Urban Core Program, and most universities do have this kind of person. But she doesn't necessarily, while she supports service learning, like I do my every every election I can, though not in 2020, my students do exit polling at random sample of polls in early voting, and so she supported that. And many of us do service learning. So what Tamara, our person, might do is say, you know, let's try and encourage students to be poll workers. And in fact, we were discussing that based on our discussions here in our meeting about a month ago. You know, how I love the idea at all levels of poll workers, you know, across the life course. So I'm like, well, we've got to get staff, we got to get students, and we got to get faculty. We can't ignore any of these populations in trying to encourage this, right? Just because of what you guys said, I said that, but we do service learning. I've been doing service learning, but UNC Charlotte doesn't have a great coordinated effort at it, though I think it will try. That requires students to get out into the community and do 15 hours or 20 hours of something. So, I mean, we could put in the report, you know, I don't know, and maybe Leslie knows, you know, how many places do service learning. So I'll write that down. We could put that in, and I'm all over that. I love it. Let me see.
3-minute warning.
3-minute warning, I know, and I talk too much. It's a problem. It's a problem. Okay, so I want to show you. So what I noticed is we don't have anything really written for like a problem statement, or not necessarily a problem statement, but we have some challenges, but we don't really have a lot of data. We have some wonderful ideas. I'm super excited about, like the data library. So I was hoping that I could find someone to volunteer to write about career development, for why we might need more training for local election officials or career development. And so what I think it would, so I put a couple of tables in here about if they like the work, but I was wondering if someone might be willing to write that up.
We're talking about,
So am I sharing it now? I thought I was.
yeah,
Let me go back and, oh, there's 2 new messages. Let's see. So what I did, I was hoping I might make this a little easier. I put in some tables of some data that I thought might be interesting. There was also a link about an NBC story about turnover. And then I think that I could go through, I want to listen to Karen Brunson Bell's talk again to pull out important details. And I thought one of those might be something about turnover. Oh, everyone's busy. Well, if you're interested, let me know. And if no one volunteers, it'll get done. I don't mind doing it, I guess. So these are just tables from the Roberts and Greenberger report.
should I just be brainstorming on different ways that we can recruit poll workers?
Well, so yeah, I mean, that would be great. So because that's been kind of, if you look right here in this report, we have, you know, we have Leslie's information. You have this. Okay, I think I have to stop share and then share again. Let's see. So we have a lot of ideas here, and if you want to put anything in here. So you've already kind of been through it, but I would love it if you went through it again, Shira.
Yeah, I think you sent all this today, right?
I'm sorry, what do you?
You sent this today, this report.
Yeah, I mean, I resent it again today, yeah, so you would have it, yeah.
Yeah, I'm actually
There's-
trying, rather than just, I can certainly put the ideas down, especially under the poll workers. I'm actually also trying to actually implement it.
So Jennifer, that would be a big picture question that you might be able to answer better, or Rachel. So, I love it that she's doing it. Do we put that in the report?
Sorry, ask the question again. I was distracted for a second.
No,
It's
that's
one
okay.
thing- one
Go
thing
ahead,
to put
Sharon.
it's one thing to put the ideas down from these different areas where we can recruit from. But I'm actually working on trying to actually implement the ideas, such as the getting attorneys CLE credit. And during that CLE credit, we're teaching about election day process and advertising that, we need you to come work these polls.
I
Yeah.
love it.
And I've got the Wake County Bar Association. They've agreed to help me implement this.
That's super. Yeah, if we're already doing a solution, put
Yeah.
that on the report. I mean, part of the process is educating people right now on how we do things. And if we see something that can be, changed and work with a partner to do something better now, we can definitely put that in the report that we're doing it. Bob Orr and I went to the North Carolina State Bar and found that they don't even have a section of the bar covering elections. Like they don't even have a committee that focuses on elections. They have they have a debt finance group and they have a litigation group and all, but they don't have anything on elections. So if you got Wake County to work on it, that's great.
Yeah, and we're
Well-
going to take it and we're going to take it to Mecklenburg County, but I think we also take it to the North Carolina Bar Association and see what they say. But anyway, that's as it is with attorneys. But I think sitting down, I've got a friend that can help me get, I guess, an appointment with the North Carolina, the head of the GOP and the head of the Democrat Party, and sitting down with them, because I think they could actually move the needle more than anybody.
So I love this. So maybe I'm hearing, we can write about it, but if there are sections of the population that you find that you're targeting, that you find to be reticent, maybe we target them in the report. And we say, we highly encourage these groups to also adopt what Wake County has done or something along those lines.
Yeah, it could be
And
the best-
so,
Be a best practice to highlight.
right.
Yep.
Yeah. I love it. I love that. Now, let me just throw out one more thing so that's sustainable, right?
Mhm.
That's something that once you have it, you have to update it every few years, the CLE, but it keeps going. So my big concern is, we'll have all these cool ideas and that's extremely cool, Tara. But we don't create something or recommend a best practice that's something that's sustainable and that can really help the local election officials.
Yeah, it should be very sustainable. Another thing we could do is go to the major media outlets, like let's say here, WRAL, and get them to put on a segment saying, hey, have you ever considered being a poll worker? So it is a paid position. We need your help. It's more community service, but you really get to meet a lot of nice people. I bet we could get someone that's very good at public speaking, do a segment, and if we, I don't know how media works, but there's the one in Asheville. I'm sure that there's ones in Mecklenburg County. We could hit the high spots and just
Do an advertising campaign for poll
Yeah.
workers.
Yes,
I love it.
yeah. So,
Maybe we should create a little subcommittee and, because I think the Carter Center has some resources, PR type resources. And Catherine, you turned on your camera, so you must have something to say. And then we
Well,
need to wrap up because it's 6:05.
yeah. I mean, there isn't local media in every county, but you know, there are big players like WRAL, and I think TV would be a great medium for a segment about being a poll worker. So just like kind of working those connections, like does anybody with the commission know people at WRAL that could pitch the idea, and who would the sources be and what would the locations be? I do think that's a story that they would be interested in. And that's free. Of course, advertising is something that repeats over and over again. So that's a different and also valuable method of reaching people. But yeah, from my editor's perspective, like I think news organizations would be interested in an explainer about poll workers. I got to run pretty soon.
Yeah, I know. We all do. Okay, to take action on this, what do we want to do? Have a side meeting?
I'll put together some ideas in the area of poll workers, and then to the point that I'm actually sitting down with some groups. I'll
Okay.
send more information about that.
Yeah,
Okay.
and I can gather any research that's needed because I'm so unfamiliar with elections infrastructure. I don't know if I'm comfortable like writing something about career development, but I certainly could pull together facts and data and research where it's needed.
Okay, you're saying on this career development bit in the
Well,
report?
just on anything where we might have holes. I'm also happy with like, you know, editing if there's any
Oh,
need
yeah.
for that.
This is gonna need some editing and some things to make it look consistent, I think. But I don't know that the steering committee cares if it's consistent right now, but
No, these are
Um,
drafts. These are
yeah.
drafts. We're hoping to get some students to help as we edit and polish in the fall. But you know, these are drafts.
So I'm gonna put that we looked at salaries. I guess the other thing we're gonna have to do is like how many meetings. Oh, one more question, then we gotta wrap this up. So how are we getting public input on this? I know we've talked about this in the steering committee, but I found myself just not really knowing when
Yeah,
I was thinking
we're
about
waiting for 3
this.
more polls. We had the Meredith poll. We're waiting for 3 more. That's, you know, one source. I can't remember
But
which.
we're not putting these recommendations out and getting public input.
Well, we can, when we do our town halls in the fall, we can do, you know, follow-up surveys, and we can sprinkle those with questions. But,
Okay.
you know, we haven't found committees really have the bandwidth to actually have like a public hearing.
I just
Um,
don't see us having it, but I was like, how are we gonna get that? How do we do that? I just couldn't visualize it,
Yeah, it has
other
to
than the polls.
be for the
right.
polls, and then, like I said, we might be able to do some at some of our town halls in the fall. If you have good questions you want to ask, you can share those with the steering committee, and we
So
could.
we're saying, so it's not necessarily public input, like, do they agree with these suggestions? But it's public input on the polls being, okay. What are people thinking right now? What is public opinion? Got it. Good.
Well,
Okay.
it could be public opinion on where do you think, you know, what do you think needs to be improved? Right?
Mhm.
What do you find? I mean, there is polling out there about things like voter access, ease of, you know, ease of voting. There are a lot of polls out there about some of the various topics, and we're trying to collect information that
Okay.
reflects that.
So, okay,
Rachel, you have an idea? Rachel just came on. Do you have an idea?
No, I think that we kind of, at least all the committees, most of the committees that I've been seated on, have been having that issue of trying to figure out different ways to get public input. I think that there's a lot of good ideas, but there's just a really short runway to execute it. And with us getting closer to the deadlines, it just doesn't seem possible. I know the Civic Education Committee had their phase 1 and phase 2 plan, and I think the phase 2 plan could be a great way to execute getting public input with having them kind of spread that message with the town halls and kind of in tandem.
He's good. Okay. So, okay, I'm gonna be putting together some data on salaries for you all to think about. Shara, keep working on the poll workers. Catherine, we're gonna need some, I mean, maybe you and I can talk about, maybe what we should do is you and Leslie and I do a side meeting where we talk about what we need to add in here writing wise. Maybe you should take a once over on this and see what you think. Like if you see from your sort of your journalist perspective, is there data we're missing or like part of the story we're not telling, I think is maybe where you would be especially helpful.
Okay, can do.
Yeah, so you all got the link. Okay. Anything else? Thank you, guys. Good
Thank
meeting. Sorry it ran long again. Have a good day.
Thank
Thanks,
y'all.
everybody.
Have a good one.
Thanks all.